I think people get tattooed because, you know, there's not a lot of real stuff left in the world, and it's all like a 24-hour news cycle. Nothing lasts. With tattooing, it's blood, it's pain, it's permanence. And when you get that needle in your skin for the first time, you have to be there. You can't just call it in. You have to sit there and take the pain, and then sit there and heal it, and then you got to live with the consequences of your action. Hey guys, welcome to the show today. Do a little show today on a topic that, I don't know, not everyone's going to agree on. I did a little post on Instagram the other day of one of my Japanese bodysuits on Jason, and I wrote a little blurb about how tattooing, you know, if we're honest, has been captured, right? Has been gentrified by fashion and gimmicks and trendiness and, you know, all these things, right? It's an accessory now for so many people. And I wrote a thing saying, let's make tattooing dangerous again. And a lot of people didn't understand what I meant, right? What do you mean dangerous? How was tattooing dangerous? When was tattooing dangerous? Let me explain, if you don't know. Because I find it strange that people don't understand the history of what tattooing is, was, and should be, right? Tattooing comes from a lot of different sectors of society. All of it lowbrow, right? It comes from biker culture, you know, outlaw motorcycle gangs, getting their tattoo culture from the sailor culture, from the military culture. You've got the prison culture tattoos, which obviously also comes from the outlaw biker gangs. You've got the Mexican prison tattoo culture. You got the fine line, the Chicano style tattooing. You've got the Yakuza. You've got the Japanese mafia tattooing, right? Which is, you know, not the be-all, end-all of traditional Japanese, but they were certainly big fans of it, right? If we talk about Japanese tattooing in particular, you know, there was a lot of people that got Japanese tattooing. They were called the shokunin, or the artisans that lived in downtown Edo period. They were like the carpenters, the artisans, the palanquin bearers, the guy who carried people around. They were the firemen, you know, the street knights, the orokodate, you know, and the yakuza, right? These are all the guys that were heavily tattooed. The ones who worked outside, the carpenters and the firemen, you know, often worked with their shirts off so they could show their tattoos. And I read something interesting just now as I was doing a bit of research for this piece. You know, we often talk about the munawari and the short sleeves as being able to cover with a kimono. And I read something interesting, I don't know if it's true, but it was saying that they also used to tattoo themselves in this fashion so it looked like they were wearing clothes when they were working outside and you were watching them from a distance, right? Which I found interesting, right? So if you're wearing if you've got a bodysuit that's like short sleeves with the munawari in the front, or even just a bit of a V-neck from, you know, 20, 30 meters away, it might look like you're wearing a shirt, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. But back to the dangerous thing. So a lot of tattooing, you know, comes from dangerous cultures, dangerous people, right? Dangerous places. And it's been co-opted, you know, by, like I said, fashion. You know what I mean? It's fashionable and trendy and cool to have, you know, scary tattoos or sexy tattoos or, you know, all this stuff. And like, you know, I do tattoos on normal people, so I'm part of the problem as well, if we're going to call it a problem. But it's just interesting to know, in my opinion, where this all comes from, right? Like, I grew up in a dangerous environment. I've said a million times, I left home when I was young. I was in a street gang. I tattooed in a street gang when I was young. I was also part of skinhead punk rock culture, you know. And back then, if we use skinhead culture as an example, you know, if you wore Doc Martens in the 80s, where I lived, in Toronto, Canada, there's a pretty good chance that if you were not a skinhead, you would get robbed for your boots. That's what Toronto was like. If you wore Doc Martens in Toronto and you weren't a skinhead, a group of skinhead would see you wearing your Docs and they would roll you for your boots. Just like that. Didn't matter who you were, right? Because Doc Martens in Toronto at the time were just for skinheads. And no one else was allowed to wear them according to the skinheads, right? And then you can ask around, this was real, this happened. And this was like this for years and years and years. People got arrested for it, went to jail for it. People lost their teeth over it. You know, it was a real thing. And back then, you know, things like a neck tattoo was fucking serious. If someone had a neck tattoo, there was a 99% chance they'd been in jail, and they'd either gotten it in jail or got it when they got out of jail to show how badass they were, right? It wasn't just like hands and neck tattoos. That look was dangerous. It was like, that's someone to fucking pay attention to keep an eye on if you're in a bar, right? Not to be trusted. You know, back in the 90s even, if someone had 2 sleeves, just like I do, you'd clock them, right? You'd see them in the street or in the bar or out, and, you know, you might have a subtle nod acknowledging their presence, because not a lot of people had these, and it was usually a sign that that person was a somebody. Either they were in a bike gang or in a street gang, or they were connected somehow, right? Tattooing had this very dangerous overtone back in those years, and this was in Canada, which is just Canada, you know what I mean? So you can imagine in places like, you know, California, where if you had 2 sleeves of Chicano-style tattooing back in the 80s or 90s, there was a pretty good chance you were a somebody. You were someone to be respected, right? And the same in Japan, you know, like, I don't want to get too into the Yakuza thing, but if someone has full sleeves in Japan of traditional style Japanese to this day, and they're Japanese, they're probably somebody you should respect and pay attention to, right? And in some cases, you know, just lifting your sleeve and showing your tattoo in Japan can be considered a crime if you're using it as intimidation, right? So tattooing was and is very dangerous in some circles. I mean, sailors always got tattoos before they went to sea. They got tattooed in these far off places. I mean, can you imagine being on a ship with 20, 30, 40 other dudes? You know, obviously no technology, no GPSs, you know, you're living off salted pork and barreled water, and you're going into storms. I mean, it was a very dangerous lifestyle with a very high mortality rate, right? These guys were fucking literally living on the edge, you know, so them having tattoos and stuff was real bravado, you know, like back in the, you know, you hear like, oh, you got the birds on your hands when you cross the equator. And we laugh at that now, because I mean, I've crossed the equator 20 fucking times in an airplane. It means nothing, right? But you cross the equator in a little fucking wooden ship, right, with a bunch of other dudes with no technology, that was a fucking feat, right? You earned those tattoos. That was real, you know. Or if you cross the, you know, the Horn of Africa, you got a special tattoo. Or if you spent so many days at sea, you got a special tattoo. These were real achievements on doing dangerous things, right? So those tattoos were real. So when you see, like, you know, some 18, 19-year-old kid gets a couple of birds on his hands to have that look, you know what I mean? It is a, you know, cultural appropriation, if we want to call it, right? You know, in terms of marking achievements that other people earned. And, you know, I'm probably going to catch some shit for this, but fuck, whatever, right? Same with prison tattoos. Same with, you know, the teardrop, or, you know, the spider web on the elbow. Or, I mean, you know, there's all these books on Russian prison tattoos. I've got them all, right? Now, I've never tattooed them on somebody, because that's just, yeah, it's just a no-go for me, right? But you see them all the time. It's a big trend now for people to get these real dark, black, Russian-style prison tattoos all over their arms, on these little, you know, soy jack guys with their man buns and shit, walking their French bulldogs. And it just, you know, and I guess the saving grace with Japanese tattooing is, for me, you know, is that Japanese tattooing, while was patronized heavily back in the 80s and 90s by the Yakuza in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, right? It didn't have its origins as Yakuza, right? It had its origins, as I said before, in, it was art, right? So you had the aesthetic from the Edo period. You know, it was based on that book, which I've talked about, the Suikoden, right? Which was the story of the Japanese, sort of Chinese band of rebels that were fighting the government, and they were fighting these big animals and overthrowing local warlords. And in the book, they all have big tattoos on them. And then Kuniyoshi did a series of prints, right? It's a book you can buy now if you want to see it. It's called Of Brigands and Bravery, right? Or if you just go into Google and type in Suikoden prints, you can see them, right? It's the big prints. A lot of the back pieces I've done are based off these prints, right? But these weren't criminals. This wasn't a criminal gang, but these were dangerous men, right? So people were idolizing these dangerous men that were doing these dangerous things, whether it was slaying a giant beast or fighting off a band of bandits, you know. So tattooing's always had this dangerous connotation to it. And so people who did dangerous jobs in Japan, as we're speaking of, say like firemen who are fighting fires in a city built of paper and wood, you know, they would adorn themselves with like water, and because dragons are a water creature that often have dragons and in a watery background as their symbol. They'd have the same as they had tattooed on them on their fire jackets, you know, or people that did carpentry, working outside, building these high-rise wooden and paper things, working in the sun, they would have tattoos, you know. So it was always attracted to people who were, you know, machismo and bravery and danger, right? There's no other word for it. It's danger, right? Guys in the military, special forces, all of them get full sleeves a lot before, during, and after the war, right? It was a look, you know what I mean? That operator look. So it's always been associated with danger, right? And I like that because that's I kind of grew up in that world, you know, where it was dangerous, man. You worked in a tattoo shop, you know, you had to be ready to fight. It wasn't a joke, you know. Drunks would come in, people would come in and try and fuck with you, maybe try to rob you, or, you know, or get a tattoo and then not pay. You know, first time I got tattooed, my first little tattoo on the arm here, the guy told me, he goes, you know, there was a street shop in Toronto, bad area of town. He's like, yeah, you know, this guy came in last night, I tattooed him, and he didn't pay me. You see that spray bottle there? I sprayed him right in the eyes, and it was fucking acid, right? He was spraying people in the face with fucking acid for not paying for their tattoo, right? Shit was fucking seedy. Like just last week, I had a drunk pissing on the door of the shop here, right? And I told him to fuck off. And he came back and tried to fight me, and I had to knock him out in the doorway of the fucking shop, right? I mean, shit's still like that, right? Tattoo shops are fucking dangerous, right? Less so now because the clientele has changed and the sort of mood of tattooing has changed. But for all you old school guys that are watching this video, or older people who have been in the tattoo world a little bit, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so what I was getting at that post was, you know, tattooing's gotten soft, you know what I mean? Like, I think people that, again, I'm going to catch shit for this. I think people that get these big tattoos, they have to live up to them. You're not, you know, like I said with my Horiyoshi name, my Horisumi name I got from Horiyoshi, you know, I saw it as something to live up to. I didn't earn it yet, right? Something to live up to. And I think if you start getting big, dangerous fucking looking tattoos, you're making yourself look dangerous, right? You're getting that aesthetic of a dangerous person, right? You want that operator look, or that Yakuza look, or that Chicano gangbanger look. You know, you need to also be a serious person. You know, if you get some tough looking sleeves and you're an absolute fucking pussy and you get, you know, bullied around and you're acting like that, I mean, you're doing a disservice to yourself and you're making tattoos look bad. You know, and that's kind of what I was getting at, right? You know what I mean? And this is not a popular opinion in the days of toxic masculinity and the world we live in right now, right? But it is what it is. I'm old school. You know, so I think it's important if you do tattoos to understand the culture, understand the dangerous aspect and the shoulders that we stand on, where we come from as tattoo artists, right? And, you know, the reason I don't do the Russian prison tattoos, like I was saying before, is, I mean, if you get Russian prison tattoos on you from a book, so these books were documented in Russian prisons by a jail guard. It's a series of 3 or 4 books. It's got all the shit. Crazy stuff in Russian I don't understand. But you tattoo that stuff on somebody, and that guy goes traveling in Europe, and there's a lot of Russians around the world, apart from what's going on now in Ukraine, all that shit. I mean, there's a lot of Russians around, and they see that tattoo, man, there's a good fucking chance you're going to get your head kicked in. No different than if you go get a tattoo of a biker gang, you know, you go get a logo of a biker gang tattooed on you, you know, just as a fucking aesthetic, right? You will get fucking crushed if the wrong person sees that today, right? It's not a joke, right? Tattoos, you know, these serious tattoos have meaning, you know? I mean, it's one thing to get a sailor tattoo, whatever, right? But there are still cultures where imagery and symbolism is sacred, and it's fucking dangerous to copy that and to try and appropriate it for yourself so you have a tough sticker, right? So you do well to know what you're doing and know what you're getting into, right? You know, I get people that come in and they get like I want a fucking giant dragon back piece, or, you know, warrior back piece, and then, you know, And the guys I'm talking, you know, they'll be, oh, this fucking hurts. I'm like, man, fucking suck it up, right? Figure it out, because you're getting this big tough sticker on your back to show how brave and tough and fucking dangerous you are, right? You got to earn that shit. You know, you got to earn at least getting the tattoo, right? So that's my 2 cents on that. It's food for thought. Everyone's gonna have a fucking opinion. You know, I'm really into the traditional aspect. For me, I like to do things that have meaning and purpose, right? That's what drives me. You know, I mean, it's not me. It's you know, it's the human condition. We seek purpose in life. We seek meaning in life. We seek symbols that mean something, something to attach ourselves to, something to believe in, right? I believe in Japanese tattooing. I believe in the strength and the power of Japanese tattooing as personal totems for ourselves, warnings to others, you know, the beauty and aesthetic of it, but also the underlying symbology of it, of what it says to the world and what it says to ourselves. If you know you have a giant fucking snake on your back like I have, or you have a big tiger on your back, or a big dragon on your back, or a warrior slaying something, you know, that you can use that yourself as a source of inspiration to carry on through the day, to persevere. Not just knowing you finished the tattoo and you got it and you have the strength, but also that you carry that with you and you can summon that power when you need to crush the day, or to crush a goal, or to crush an obstacle, or to crush an opponent. Right? So that's how I look at tattooing. And that's why I say keep it fucking dangerous. Keep tattooing dangerous. Make tattooing dangerous again. Even if it's just for yourself, right? You know what I mean? So that's my story for today. I hope you find that entertaining and enlightening. I'm happy to hear your comments. I try to reply to the ones I can. If you have anything you want to shoot me in the DMs, hit me up in the DMs, or drop it in the comments and we'll keep the conversation going there. All right, guys, and if there's anything else that you want to hear about, I'm all ears. Let me know. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.